Welcome to another episode of Couch Catechism. My name's Michael Obeid from Veracious Media. Welcome to the show. Please, before we continue, if you don't mind sharing this video, and also we have a YouTube channel called Veracious Media. Please help us out in the work that we do by subscribing to our channel. Tonight we've got a very special guest, Daniel Mafota. How are you going?
Very well, Michael. How are you?
Daniel Mafota was an ex-student of mine, and tonight we're going to hear about his testimony to the faith. It's a crazy journey, and I wanted everybody to know about it because after you told me about your journey from when I met you at school and until now, I think it's an amazing testimony. I think everybody needs to hear it.
Thanks, Mike.
So we're going to start from the beginning. So let's start, for example, where did you want to start? Do you want to start with your childhood?
I'll start with my childhood, Nick.
Okay.
So I grew up just as, every young kid does. Loving family, loving parents, 2 older brothers. And I loved life. Life was good. Life was great. I had a very close relationship with my parents, with my brothers, and we live in a very, beautiful suburban house in Russell Lee, around the 5 Dock area. And life was good until, I'd say, year 7.
Were you a good kid at school, in primary?
Yes, year 5 and 6 I was.
Taking your studies seriously?
Took my studies seriously, enjoyed school.
Yep.
Enjoyed everything about school, had a great relationship with my teachers. I was academic. I really enjoyed studying. And then we fast track to year 7, where let's say things took, a turn for the worse.
What happened?
My parents got separated when I was 13, or just prior to starting my high school year. And I was a bit lost, we can say, because I went from, a very strong, structured family to living, in a family, that has just, or with parents that had just gone through a separation. So it was a bit tough. It was very tough, and as we all know, separation has impacts on children.
Yep.
Whether parents know, whether they don't know, it does.
Yep.
Whether we know as young children, at the time we don't.
Yep.
However,
has an effect on you.
Yes, and you'll see as we progress through this talk how it did. Now, I went to year 7, with this goal in mind that I wanted to, let's say, achieve what my brothers achieved, in the sense that, I had this preconceived idea of, what a successful, teenage life was. That was partying, girls, popularity, friendships, that's what I wanted. That's how I kind of went into year 7, into my high school year, because that's what I had seen prior with, my brothers growing up especially. And I felt like I had to live up to their expectations, okay? Now, year 7 was I'd say, a pretty poor year, because I disregarded my studies, did not care about them at all. I was a delinquent. I would quite, frequently get in arguments with my teachers. Got in with the wrong crowd at school. We can say kind of the bad kids, and that kind of led me on a path where things took even more of a turn for the worse. And we can, let's say, fast track to year 8 now, where I developed a really close friendship with a good mate of mine who I'm still very close with today. We're still very, very close. And it was at that time when I started to smoke marijuana, or I tried smoking marijuana. So at this stage I was 14 years old, so I'd gotten into this and I'd started smoking. I'd started smoking quite frequently. It started off with weekends, so every Saturday, and I was going from year 7 to year 8. I'll develop these friendships. I became quite popular. I got a girlfriend. I was going to parties and whatnot, and I was enjoying life. Now, let's say come year 8, when I started smoking and whatnot, I got involved with, we can say, the wrong crowd at the time. It became a regular thing. And like I said, it started from, weekends, progressed to weekdays, before school, after school, before soccer training, after soccer training, before soccer, after soccer.
Far out.
So I was kind of a walking zombie, you know. I was always in a state of, I was always in a daze,
Yep.
you know. And you can imagine a young kid who is smoking marijuana for this period of time, it does have an impact and an effect on, you know, a developing brain.
Yep.
Now, as well, as school progressed, you know, we can say from year 8 to year 9, I continued smoking every day, every day. And smoking every day, again, became, you know, a regular thing for me. It became a part of my life. And there was one stage, and during this time as well, I became a recluse.
Yep.
I stopped going out to parties. I stopped hanging out with friends. I distanced myself. I had a very, you know, tight friendship group with a group of people where we would be doing the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at this time that, you know, life became pretty dismal, you know, because that was my life. That's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to mention that at that time as well, I was a very aggressive kid, not towards my friends and, you know, close friends and to the general public, but mainly towards my family. I was very abusive.
Yep.
I was aggressive, you know. An example would be where I would destroy my brother's, you know, door, TV, punch holes in the walls. I would pull knives out and I would try and slice my brother and, you know, do all these pretty, you know, horrendous things.
And were you aggravated by that? Like, did they pick on you, or did they try to get you to get angry? What,
yeah, it'd just be friendly banter, you know.
But you take it a bit too far.
I did.
Okay.
I did. And there was, at the same time, you know, I was very socially anxious, you know.
Yeah.
I was suffering, you know, from what I found out later, anxiety. And marijuana did contribute, you know, to that. In the end, I didn't like being that person, Mick, you know. It's a very ugly feeling, you know, when you come out of a rage and you feel 10 times worse afterwards. And I was very proud. I couldn't say sorry.
Yep.
And it was bad, you know, it was bad. Now, my parents at this stage didn't know why I was like this.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, well, he's you know, they probably think he's a little psychopath here.
Yep.
Don't know why, but he is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I saw blue, it was blue. That was it. Now, the funny thing is that we can fast track a little bit to year 9, where it was still quite frequent, you know. However, at this stage, I had purchased, you know, marijuana from a friend of mine who was actually in my year at school. And he was dealing, and he had laced this marijuana with morphine. He had sprayed morphine on it, and
You didn't know about that though?
no, I didn't. At the time, I did not know.
Okay.
You know, and it's supposed to enhance the effects, enhances the high, enhances the high. You come back for more.
Yep.
And I remember smoking this one time, and what had happened to me was that usually when you go to sleep after you smoke, you sleep it off and you're back to normal.
Yep.
This time, when I'd woken up, the high never went away.
Mm-hmm.
The high was there.
It was like permanent.
It was permanent.
Okay.
And I'd literally fried my brain. We can say that. I'd fried my brain to the point where I had lost sense of reality and time at that stage, you know?
Mm.
And I didn't feel like I was in reality, you know? My brain was in a very different position, like was very vulnerable in a very different stage at that time.
Yep.
Where I was quite scared, to be honest, you know?
Okay.
I couldn't, like, what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
1 day passed, 2 day passed, 3 day passed,
And
it
you're worried
stayed.
this is never going to go away?
Months went past,
Okay.
it stayed. Now, unfortunately, I continued smoking marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And excessively, day in, day out, you know, the same thing. Up until there was a stage where my brother had actually found a stash of drugs that I was hiding in my backyard for a friend. Now, this stash had coke, pills, marijuana, you name it, had a lot. And he came out and he goes, mate, what's this? And he lost it. He blitzed it. He goes, mate, what are you doing? You know, like, is this yours? Tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just I had nothing to say. I was like, you can't run from it, you know? And he had told my mum, and my brother and my mum had taken me to dinner that night, and they had just said to me, what happened?
Yeah.
Whose is it? Why do you have this? And where did it go wrong? Like, how long have you been doing this for? Is it yours? Are you dealing? Are you taking? I need to know these things. How did you get to this path?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so, you know, having my mum working 2 jobs and my dad working as well and not living with us, I had a lot of freedom to do these things.
Yep.
Now, my parents had no idea that I was doing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they can't blame themselves. I can't blame them. I made those choices consciously to do these things. So I got into this state where I was smoking so frequently that I'd fried my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after I'd been caught with this stash of drugs, and I'd been taken to dinner by my parents, you know, or by my mother and my brother, I remember being very ashamed that my mum was disappointed in me, and that my brother was disappointed in me as well. And they were asking the questions as they did, where did it all go wrong? But at the same time, they were saying it has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't stop, you're going to become a deadbeat, a drop kick. Now, it's important to note that growing up, I was always taught that drugs were bad. I was never taught why they were bad.
Yeah.
And it's only until you try it,
mm-hmm.
until you realise, oh, this is a great feeling. Just like alcohol, for example. When
Yeah.
you drink alcohol, you get that tipsy feeling. It's a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are consequences to excessive use.
Yeah.
And I only realised that later on as I, you know, progressed using it. So as I went on, then, you know, my mum had this talk with me and my brother had this talk with me. I decided at that time that I wanted to make something of myself. That I always thought I could never amount to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, you know, going through high school failing, and then I'd also associated my failings with my brain being fried.
Okay.
I can't recall information, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to permanently be like this for the rest of my life. And I was very down about that, you know. I was very anxious about that. And we can go to year 10 now, where I was a recluse for that period of time, where I stopped hanging out with a lot of friends between that high school gap.
Yeah.
Come year 10, I started taking this drug for my acne,
Yeah.
which was called Racetane,
Yeah.
which, you know, clears your acne, but there are side effects to it. You know, liver damage, depression, anxiety, muscular pain, you name it, you know.
It's a strong medication.
Strong
right?
medication that
Yeah.
works. I'm sure you know a lot of probably students that have been on it.
Yeah.
And at this stage, I was smoking on it. I was drinking on it. I started drinking again in year 10.
Dangerous, though. That's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, it is very, very dangerous, especially to your liver, you know, and your mental health as well. And the reason I was drinking was because of the fact that I had started socialising again, because I had gained more confidence knowing that my acne was clearing up.
Yep.
And I went on, you know, in year 10, year 16, there's a lot of parties.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was very socially anxious.
Mm-hmm.
I needed
The alcohol.
the alcohol and the marijuana to kind of
Calm you down.
calm me down, help me to speak to girls, you know, not fear judgment from others, liquid courage, we can say.
Yep.
Now, this would obviously have effects on my brain as it went on. My brain was, you know, already fried, and topping it off with continual use of marijuana up until, we can say, close to the end of year 10, where I had decided, I'd committed myself, probably mid-year 10 we can say, I committed myself to to study, to get in better grades, because I decided to go for an ATAR. Now, going for an ATAR was out of the picture because I always thought I'm going to be a tradie. I'm going to, join the family business doing tiling. And that I actually ended up doing, which is great. However, I made that conscious decision that in order for me to achieve in my ATAR, I have to stop smoking marijuana. And the day that I actually decided to stop smoking was on the day of the 5 Doc Festa. Now, I didn't know this back then, but now I know that, crazily enough, that the 5 Doc Festa is actually, a festa that is celebrated in honour of Our Lady on the Feast of her Assumption.
Wow. And you didn't know this back then?
I didn't know that back then. I didn't know my Catholic faith, I can say my prayers, like from a young kid up until then, was, Jesus, look after all the sick people in the world and please make them feel better every night. And looking back now, it was pretty unbelievable, to see how Our Lady kind of worked in that way.
That way for you. And what was your relationship like with your teachers and up until that point? What was schooling like?
Bad. Bad. I was very aggressive. I was very abusive, verbally abusive to them. I showed no respect. I didn't care about them. I didn't know why. I didn't know that teaching was actually a job. I literally just assumed these were just volunteers that are here to teach,
to babysit you.
Literally. And I'm like, and they're just miserable people that, got nothing better to do with their lives. And that's what I thought. So after I committed myself and I had decided to stop, I had a lot of friends that were saying, come on, man, don't stop. It's good for you. It's something we do as a group. It's, why not? Why? And I told them the truth, that I'd fried my brain by smoking excessively. And I want to stop because I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. I can't be like this for the rest of my life. And I decided to stop on that day. Now, that next month was quite hard because I had withdrawal symptoms. Marijuana is probably the lower form of, dangerous drugs or, hard drugs. However, I had the sweats, I had the chills, I couldn't sleep at night, I was paranoid. I was literally like a wreck, but I got through it.
You're getting through it,
I got through it.
Okay.
Now, we can then fast track to year 11 now. Now, year 11, I went for an ATAR and, funnily enough, I was in my standard English class and we were studying a play about mental illness where my English teacher said, if you've been feeling down, low, you've lost your appetite, you can't sleep as well, that you're sleeping more than you usually do, that you don't find the things that you used to do as fun anymore. These are symptoms and signs that you possibly could be depressed. Now, when I heard that, I was a bit alarmed. I was like, well, I'm feeling these things, but I can't be depressed. I was in denial. I was like, I've got everything going for me, sports, you can say girls, parties, great friendships, you name it, like good home life that my mum was providing, and had a great relationship with my dad and my brothers at this stage, I could say. And I was like, depression is for people who are, who have suffered some trauma or some tragedy in life.
Or they're getting bullied at school or something
literally,
like that.
I was like, not me, not me. This isn't going to happen to me. And I got home and I really thought deep of that. And I remember approaching my mum and I said, Mum, this is what I'm feeling. And being the great mother she is, she said, all right, let's go to a GP and, we'll see if we can get a referral to a psychologist. So I went to the GP, I did a test and there was a bunch of questions, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And I came in at mild, so like a 5 out of 10 we can say.
Mild depression.
Mild depression. And she said there's 2 options. You either do nothing about it and continue your day-to-day life, or
see a psychologist.
Now, I wanted to help myself because I was sick of feeling this way. And that I did. I saw a psychologist for, I think, 3 or 4 sessions. and he determined that I had severe anxiety.
Yep.
And that he was helping me deal with that. So he showed me techniques how to deal with anxiety, especially in a social setting, because I was using alcohol quite frequently to, place myself in situations.
And that effect that you had from the marijuana. Did you still have that daze?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And was that causing you depression as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was
the fact that you were waking up with that every day.
Yes, it was that, because there was still that belief, that interior belief that
Yep.
this is stopping me from being my best self.
Okay.
I always felt like
Yep.
I couldn't excel in anything because this was holding me
because
back.
of this permanent damage that you've caused,
and that people had
back in year 9.
People had the upper hand over me because they didn't experience this.
Okay.
Now, he taught me these techniques, which were great, which helped.
Yeah.
They were coping mechanisms. However, it didn't heal the depression.
Okay.
It didn't cure the depression. Now, at this same time was when I met you, Michael.
Yeah.
And you were my homeroom teacher.
Yep.
And I remember when you had come in, we had got the gist of who you were as a person, what you stood for, what your values were.
Yep.
And at the beginning, quite frankly, I'll be honest, I didn't really like you because some of the things that you were saying were controversial to me.
Contrary to what you believe. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because there were things that I didn't believe and things that I were doing and things that you were saying were wrong.
Yep.
And these were things from, drug use, alcohol, sins of impurity, you name it.
Yep.
And I remember being quite intrigued at the same time, but quite offended at the same time.
Okay.
And I would always come back and ask you more and more questions.
Yep.
And there was one situation that happened within my family where I was so puzzled and so troubled by what had happened that I remember coming up to your staff room and knocking on your door and saying, Mr. Abid, can I have a chat with you? And you took me into your classroom and you said, yeah, mate, what's up? And I told you what had happened. Now, for the sake of this, talk, I won't mention what it was. Now, you just gave me your advice, you just said what you said, which helped, which was, consoling. And there was also practical advice in that because I also opened up to you about my life, about what had happened to me prior with my drug use and whatnot. And from there, we developed, I'd say, probably a closer friendship as a teacher and a student does. Where I would come to you quite frequently, for advice, and you would help me. Now, at the same time, and I only found this out probably 3 years later, when I had told you, you had...
About that incident?
I remember you told me, I think I was in year 12, you said to me, when we finish school, I want you to come to me and I want you to ask me, and you said, I'm going to tell you something, but you said, remind me and ask me, on that day, what had happened. And I remember asking you, and maybe you're the best person to tell, to tell this story because it was quite crazy when you think about it.
It's funny though because what happened was that at the start of year 11, when I had I'd started at your school, it was a new school for me, and it was my first job at a Catholic school, and I'd gotten into my faith as a couple of years before that, but I had been given a book called The Holy Cloak of Saint Joseph. And it's a 33-day novena. And I was told by a friend of mine how strong and how powerful this novena actually is. The Holy Cloak of Saint Joseph. And I remember that when I used to drive to school, I would stop by a church called St. Francis Xavier at Ashbury. And when I went in, the church was always open at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I went in and I used to say morning prayers there. But I went in to say this, and I saw this nice statue of Saint Joseph there. Within the church, and that's where I said I was going to dedicate a 33-day novena dedicated to your homeroom class because because it was I felt like there was an opportunity there to try to see what I could do to try to help you guys. But for some weird reason, it was weird as well. But because after a couple of conversations with the class, I noticed that you were really paying attention. So I kind of at the back of my mind, I was like, this novena is for everybody, but especially for him because it seems like he's actually resonating with some of the things that I'm saying. And within a week of the novena, while I was doing it, that's when you came up to the
classroom,
and knocked on the door to ask me. So that's the background there.
Yeah.
So keep going. So what happened there?
So from that moment on, I was quite intrigued by the faith. I knew that the things you were uttering, the things you were saying were true.
Yeah.
However, I still had this attachment, I could say, to these things.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to hear more, And during this time, at the same time, you were encouraging us to, examine our conscience, go to confession.
Yeah.
And you did it to our homeroom class.
Yeah.
And I remember, reading the examination of conscience and thinking, oh my goodness, like I've committed every sin on this list. And there's no way I can go confess these things to a priest because, my goodness, like I'm the worst sinner there is.
Yeah.
Now, by God's grace, I did end up going to confession with this priest that was at school.
Yeah.
Now, the great thing about my school was that we had a chapel that was, in the actual school itself. We didn't have to go out of the school to go. It was in the school. We had Christ present in the tabernacle. We had a priest that was always there on duty if we ever needed him.
He was a good priest too. Like the chaplain there, he's a passionist from St. Bridget's at Marrickville. I think he's retired now. He's a bit old, bit sick, but he was actually my spiritual advisor for the time that I was there, and it actually really worked well there. Was because when I was asking your class, speaking to you guys about the faith, the practical side and the practical aspect that worked in harmony with the fact that I was teaching it was the fact that you had a priest there that was saying mass and hearing your confessions. So I was telling you about all this, about sin and about confession, about God's mercy and forgiveness, and then we had a priest there that you were going to for confession. I'm sure that he would have helped you and a couple of the guys out. Definitely,
and I think one thing that really moved me to go to confession was when you had explained, it was on the examination of conscience, but you had explained, mortal sin, deliberate, full consent, grave matter. And I was really baffled by that. I was like, my goodness, it makes sense, why you would be separated from God because of these things. Now, at the same time, we can fast track a bit more now to Year 11 retreat, which we could say is at the start.
End of Year 11,
start of Year 12.
Yep.
Now, at Year 11 retreat, I remember we had these guest speakers which one of the teachers had organised to come, and the man was speaking. He was the man that was speaking first, and he was speaking about the effects of pornography on the brain, how it makes young people view women, how it changes your perception on what women actually, on what you think women want, but actually they really don't. And I really, really remember myself, along with my student body or the group that was there listening, being very intrigued by the things that he was saying, because for me especially, I suffered with sins of impurity, and I was a regular porn watcher. I had watched porn from a very young age, up until high school.
And you didn't think that there was anything wrong with it?
No, didn't really. No idea. It was so culturally normal, I could say. Especially amongst my group. It's like when I look back at it now, you can't, I can't believe just how openly and normally we spoke about it, with no shame, with no fear of what teachers might think. We'd talk about it openly in class. Our hearts were very closed, you know, but even just our minds were very closed to any idea that porn was a bad thing. And hearing this guy speak was quite moving, and I remember being very touched. And he mentioned this woman, who was abused, who was assaulted, and to tell you her whole story, I don't know. I don't really remember. But I remember hearing it and being very touched. And he ended the talk with, "And now I'd like to introduce you to my wife," who was the woman that he was speaking about. And she had come up and she had explained to us guys there her story, what had happened, what she had gone through. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember it was so moving that there were students crying, And I remember being so touched because I was thinking, I've contributed to this in one way or another. I'm sure the students felt the same way. And it had a very positive impact on the student body. And I remember walking away and talking about with friends later on during our retreat, you know, how touched they were and like what a crazy story. I never thought of that. And it gave me a new, you know, perspective on that, especially. Now, after that talk, I went up to my room. I had, you know, closed the door, had my mates all in there. They were wrestling, fighting, you know, all my roommates.
Yep.
I remember closing my eyes and just praying, like really just trying to pray. And I remember going into like a beautiful state of, you know, harmony, of bliss, of like a trance, we can say, where I blocked out all the noise around me. And I remember praying, you know, and to say what I said, I don't remember, but I remember just feeling this warmth inside me, this, you know, this feeling of love. And it went away. My prayer stopped. Now, at this same time, prior to the start of this retreat, I had organised with a girl that when I come back from my retreat, that we were going to meet up and that we were going to sleep together.
Okay.
Now, it's funny because I remember prior to this actual talk, I remember joking around with friends, you know, in like the playground or outside, saying, I'm going to do this, you know, I've got this coming up. Everyone's like, how good? And I remember saying it in front of a teacher, and the teacher, a female teacher, was like, you know, I don't want to hear that disgusting language around here, you know, have some respect. And I was like, oh, shut up, miss, you know, like, you know, grow up, you know, we're all adults here, blah, blah, blah. And she let it go. She's like, she didn't want a bar of it, didn't want to hear it. But then after I heard this talk, I had I had a change of heart, a different, you know, perspective now on what I was doing, what I was about to do. Now, in the midst of all this, I was still suffering, you know, from depression. My mind was still in a, you know, a crazy state. And I remember coming back home that Friday, and she was messaging me saying, you know, when are we going to meet up? And I remember literally, it's like you've probably seen those TV shows where you've got the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. And I had my phone, I was weighing up, do I go, do I not? Do I go, do I not? You know, like, I've been given this, you know, not to say insight, but this kind of grace-filled moment, I can say, where I was questioning, like, I'd heard all this stuff, and what type of person will I be after hearing this stuff? You know, if I went and did this thing. And at that moment, I made the decision to say, listen, you know, can't meet up, that's it. And I just canned it, you know, and I never spoke to her after that.
Did you give her reasons why?
Later on, I did. Later on, you know, and she understood. She was, you know, she understood. She
would have been surprised.
Yeah, she was surprised, and surprised enough, she was, you know, quite supportive of it.
Wow.
Yeah, really strange. And I decided not to. And I'd say from that moment on was kind of the start of the spiritual journey. Now, I remember coming back, and I remember coming back from school one day, and I remember reading a quote from scripture, because I was, well, you know, reading a lot then. And the quote was, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I remember hearing that and being so touched by that. And by this stage, you know, my depression had got to a point where I was, you know, so overwhelmed that I had, you can say, fallen into a state of despair. I was never suicidal. However, I was always down. I hated feeling like this, you know. And I thought, if a psychologist can't help me, who can? And I was so burdened, literally burdened. And I was tired of feeling this way. And if anyone's been depressed, they'll know what I'm speaking about. To feel like that is you go down a very, very dark road. You know, you feel like there's no hope. But after reading that and after going through everything I experienced, I thought, if it is true, you know, and if what Jesus has said is true, let me try it. And I remember kneeling down, and I was nearly crying. And I said, Lord, if what you said is true and you can take this away from me and you will carry it for me, then do it, because I can't carry it myself anymore.
Okay.
And I remember it was one of the most sincere prayers I'd ever said, you know, because I was so, you know, I was so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't, it's a very hard thing to explain how I felt. Now, the following day, I remember waking up, you know, and unbelievably, I woke up with like just a smile on my face. I'd felt this electric feeling through my body when I'd woken up. I'd never felt this before in my life. Like this was just like I was like on fire, this feeling of fire, you know?
Wow.
But joy, like there was this joy. I had this radiance, this radiating joy that,
Yeah.
you know? I remember everything was so positive, Mick, you know? I remember getting up, I was so happy, you know? I remember I went to school and I thought I might wear away when I go to school. The same thing happened at school. Just the little things in life I was so grateful for. You know, the sun, for example, friendships, being at a school where I was getting educated, you know, having a beautiful family. These things were really, you know, were really present at that moment. It was just such a reality. And I'd gone from living in this state of, you know, like darkness and a daze, you know, because of what I had done, my, you know, my brain and, you know, what I'd done to my brain, now to just forgetting about all that. And there was this, you know, joy that was emitting out of me. It was just an amazing feeling. Now, it didn't take me long to realize that where that had come from. And when I attribute it, when I think back on it now, it was an unbelievable thing, you know. It was a sincere prayer that was answered.
Okay.
And from that moment on was when I will say that my depression was lifted totally, completely.
Far out.
And it's not to say that I don't have tough days now or stressful days or, you know, with work or whatever it is. You're always going to get those. There's some days where you're down. But I've never gone back to that stage where I was in despair.
Okay.
Where I was constantly feeling like that, you know? And I thank God every day for doing that, you know, because so often people get to that point and they see there's no way out. Okay. They see that there's nothing forward. And, you know, if what Jesus said is true, and I remember I was singing this at Mass one time, and the words were, "Truth itself speaks truly, or else there is nothing true."
Yeah.
And I think about that now. And from that moment, at that time, I had such trust in God, in what God said, you know, and he stuck by it, you know, and he answered my prayer. And from there was when my spiritual life took off. Amazing things happened after that, you know. I was attending confession regularly, and I would say if there was one, we can say, you know, moment in that conversion that really got me, or that really kind of solidified me, we can say two moments. First was I attended the traditional Latin Mass at Maternal Heart, and I remember thinking like, this is where I want to be, like this is heaven on earth, you know? Like this is something more than, this is the reality, you know? Like this is actually reality, not what I've been living, not what I thought, you know, was happening. This is it. Yeah. And that was the first. And actually I remember my father walking into, because he had to pick me up from that, and he had never seen that before. And there was incense everywhere, and you know, they were speaking the hymns. And
freaked out.
He freaked out. He's like, man, what cult are you going to?
What's going on now?
What's going on?
Yeah, and what was the second?
But he was actually very intrigued by it.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
He was very intrigued by it. And the second was, I remember at the same time, my cousin was getting into the faith as well.
Yep.
And our grandmother was dying at that time.
That's right.
And she was in hospital at RPA. And we caught the bus down Parramatta Road, walked up. And prior to this, actually, I'll mention when I was in year 11 or year 12, you and I and a few other students, we went on a working bee with the Sisters of Mercy.
At St. Joseph's in
at St.
Camperdown,
Joseph's in Camperdown.
which is right next to RPA.
Yes, that's right. And we would spend the day with the sisters, you know, it was gardening, eating lunch, praying.
Yep.
But in the morning, we started off the morning with Mass.
With Mass, that's
with
right.
Father Anthony Bernard.
Yep.
And
Who would later on become like your
Yeah.
spiritual director.
my spiritual
and-
director, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to see him.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he was actually, I remember, and I always joke about this, when it came to the elevation of the Eucharist,
Yeah.
he would hold it there for like for
6
ages,
minutes,
you know. But you could see the reverence that he had for it. You know, he
Just,
adored,
yeah, and loves
and
our
he
Lord.
does
Yeah.
adore the Eucharist. You know,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, like
Yeah.
this guy actually sincerely believes. And I remember he was so welcoming, so warming. Come in, guys. You know,
Yeah.
make yourselves at home. I'm about to start Mass, and
Yeah.
his homily was great.
Yep.
Great way to start your morning. Like,
Yeah.
awesome, you know. Now we fast track a little bit, and when I don't remember if I think I was out of school at this stage,
Okay.
and I had walked up, you know, to visit my grandmother, and as I walked up to see my grandmother, there was Father Bernard in the car park,
Yep.
and he saw us that we had, you know, this plastic rosary beads, like the pink and purple ones,
Yep.
and he saw that we had these rosary beads, and he goes, "Where are you boys going? Like, what are you guys doing holding that?"
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, we're about to, you know, we're about to go pray a rosary."
Yeah.
He's like, wait here. So he runs into his, you know, his presbytery, and he comes out with these handmade rosaries, and I still wear mine now.
Oh, wow.
And that was it, you know. I think they were seeds, if I have it correctly, from his father's garden or something like that. So
Wow.
pretty awesome, you know. And he
Wow.
gave one to me, one to my cousin,
Wow.
and he blessed them. Gave it to us, and he says, and he gave us the rosary. And he goes, "And where are you guys going?" We go, "We're going to visit our grandmother." And he's like, "All right, cool, I'll come with you." We're like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, I'll come give her confession, communion. I'll talk to her."
Yeah.
He's like, let's go. And I was like, "Who's this guy?" You know,
Yeah.
like, it's unbelievable. And seeing that, like that, just it really he captured my heart that moment.
Okay.
You know, that was an act of love, an act of
Yeah.
charity.
Yeah.
I remember going up there, and you know, he was talking to my grandmother in Italian, and you know, he'd given her confession, and you know, she received the Eucharist, and I remember him just really consoling her, you know, like answering her questions.
Yeah.
It was a very, very profound and beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And from there, Mick, that's where it kind of took off, you know. And at that time, I did lose a lot of friends, you know. I was bagged out quite frequently.
Yeah.
I remember
About taking your faith seriously.
yeah, about taking it seriously, you know,
Yeah.
because there were certain things I didn't want to do, certain parties I didn't want to go to.
Yep.
You know, you hit 18, everyone goes clubbing. I didn't really want to go clubbing.
Wow.
Um,
So you made some big
I
sacrifices.
did. And not to say I did go.
Yeah.
You know, I did go, but there were times when I didn't want to go, and
Okay.
as I was developing closer and closer to God and going into my spiritual life, I did.
Yeah.
And I remember at school, my nickname was Padre. You know,
Yeah.
like priest in Italian.
Yeah.
It got to the point where, and I didn't care. You know, it was
Yeah.
funny. It was all banter.
Mm-hmm.
It got to the point where even the teachers were starting to call me
Oh,
Padre
really?
now. You know, so the word had kind of gotten around that, you know, Daniel's gotten into the faith, and
Yep.
and I spent a lot of my time in the chapel as
Yep.
well. And there were a group of boys at the same time that were going through the same thing.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And it really helped having a group of mates that,
Yeah.
you know, would stand by you, stand
Yeah,
firm in the faith. And
That's
we're
right.
all on the same journey. Some, you know, were progressing quicker than others. Some weren't.
Yeah.
Some left. Some are still in.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, even now, talking to these guys,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I still have a close relationship with them, you can see that the seed of faith is still in their heart, it's still
Yeah.
implanted, and they're still searching for those deeper questions.
Yeah.
And I would say, for me, the great thing is that what I've realised is that I've kind of been this go-to guy when there is a problem or there is a life problem, because
Yeah.
they trust me, you know. Whether or not they believe it, I think they see, maybe through my example, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't openly go out and tell everybody that I'm a practicing Catholic who,
Yeah.
you know, goes to confession, attends Sunday Mass.
Yep. You don't make it obvious.
I don't. No, I don't. And I fail at times.
Yep.
You know, I'm a bad example at times as well.
Yep.
However, they've approached me, you know, without me even telling anything to them. they've just approached me and just said, this is what's going on in my life. I need help.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere,
Wow.
you know. Quite frequently, like across different spectrums of my friendship groups, you know, whether it's, you know, whether it's work, whether it's soccer, whether it's even at church, you know.
Yep. Because you're managing a soccer team now, aren't
That's
you?
right, that's right. Now, it helps, you know, and it's amazing how people are searching for the truth, you know, and when they talk to me and they, you know, when I talk to them and I just say it how it is and just say this is what I believe, and, you know, we joke and we laugh and, you know, but at the same time, this is what I believe and I stand firm in this is who I am. At the beginning, I usually thought, I did realise that, you know, a lot of people were very hostile towards me, like you're a fanatic, you're crazy, and I can understand. When you first get into it, you're very militant.
Would they bring it up with you, or
so a lot of times it was a personal attack?
Okay.
You know, it became a personal attack to me, and I, you know, would defend myself, you know, with my words, and didn't end up pretty. I was sometimes a bad example because I was learning, and maybe I pulled people away, maybe I pulled people in. But I remember even being at school. I remember a lot of my year group would come up to me discreetly in private, and would ask me questions. You know, I want to change.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to. You know, how do I stop doing this?
Wow.
I struggle with this. You know, like this is what's going on. Can you help me? Can you pray for me?
Far out.
So it's interesting, you know, because so often you feel like you're not welcome. Wow. You feel like people judge you and that people assume the worst of you. Yet, and people do, don't be wrong, there are some people that do. But there are also people that are seeking truth, that want the truth, that are afraid to give up what it is that they think is good for them, because they're afraid of what they may lose because of it. You know? And I was very blessed to have that, because I learned a lot about myself, a lot about others. And even till now, Mick, you know, I'm happy being a practicing Catholic. You know, I love it. I wouldn't, you know, change it for the world. There are struggles, you know, but it involves a life of virtue, you know, of good habits, of discipline. And especially for young men, that's important, you know, especially if you're trying to pursue a marriage, you know, have a family one day. You need to be disciplined in your work, you know, in your prayer life. And I think it's the virtue part that really gets people.
Okay.
You know, I don't talk, like when people talk to me about it and they say, and they're like, how'd you get into it and whatnot, or what do you love about it? And first thing is, you know, living in a state of grace doesn't get any better than that. Second thing is, you know, being accountable for what you do. You know, no one forces you to do things that, you know, the bad things that you do, you're responsible for them. You have to take account for them yourself. You know, but at the same time, it's not just about taking account. People have to realize that there are also consequences
for their actions.
You know, and I was very blessed that I realized that early on. Some people haven't. I know a lot of my friends haven't. But I also see a lot of my friends are seeking the truth. You know, and when they do ask me, what is it, you know, like what is it you love about it? Like why, how, tell me what's good about it. You know, and just talking about virtue, good habits. They all want virtue, you know. They all want to stop doing the things that they're struggling with doing.
They know that it's bad for them.
They know it's bad, but they have that attachment to it. And they can't detach themselves from it. And you sometimes, you know, and pretty much all the time, you can't do it just by yourself. You know, it takes that act of grace, that push from God, but people have to make that choice to go and seek that first, you know, and I think that's the problem. People don't believe, they doubt, but at the same time, they don't take that chance to explore, to see what it is that is true, you know, and I think the only thing I can do is just try and be the best example of what it means to be a Christian.
Definitely. I had another speaker on the show. Christian Stevens is a lecturer at the University of Notre Dame, and we were speaking about kids around the age of 19, 20, 21, and reasons as to why they don't believe in God. And he said something very profound. He said that at the end of the day, it's and I'm just paraphrasing. He said a lot of the time they'll make excuses for the lifestyles that they're living.
Mm.
The lifestyles that they're living, they don't want to confront those sins or those bad habits or those vices. So what they'll do is they'll make some excuse for the church.
Yeah.
You know, speak bad about its priests, speak bad about the church itself,
Definitely.
about it as an institution, in order to try to cover up for their own dark, some of the dark things that they're doing within their own life, because they actually don't want to confront them. Does that resonate with you at all?
Definitely.
Like, and with the people that you've been speaking to lately?
Definitely.
Like, what have you noticed?
Well, you'll hear, I'll talk about the personal experience. Like there was an instance, I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not, but with the priest, for example, when I first met you, you know, I don't like priests, they're all pedophiles, the church is, you know, a man-made institution, and you just came out, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
No, it's not. This is why. Here are the facts, you know.
Yep.
Get your facts right.
Yeah.
And it was because I didn't like hearing the things that you were saying. Now, in regards to my friends, you know, that when you hear them, you know, saying, because I pick it up because they ask you questions, you know, and they're not asking questions unless they want to know something, or that, you know, they have an ulterior motive. You know, what is it? You know, are they searching for the truth? Are they trying to slander you?
Okay.
And in the sense when they're, you know, looking towards the truth and actually genuinely want to know, when you tell them that, you have to, you know, especially I find that a lot of it when it comes up, it's the attachment to sexual sins, especially, you know, or even sexual sins, and I'd say, you know, drug and alcohol abuse.
They're the big ones.
Always, you know, always. And I always hear, it's too hard. Like, no, see, I would do it, but I can't give that up.
Okay.
You know, I would have it, but I can't give that up.
Okay.
And that's the thing. There is that deep attachment to it.
Yep.
And when you tell them at the same time, you know, these things are bad, they get very defensive.
Okay.
And then they'll start going, but your church does this, 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 and this, and this.
Yep.
So I never claimed that my church was perfect, you know, or the church was perfect.
Yep.
And when you kind of slowly mellow, when you start to weed out these things, you know. But I think a person has to truly, genuinely want to change and seek the truth in order for there to be progress, you know. So on that, Mick, that's basically, you know,
and so
where it came in.
If you can, just so that we can just pretty much finish up, what would you say to somebody? What's advice to somebody who's listening to you right now and they're saying, you know what, I'm actually going through everything that he went through, and I've just reached this point where I just need to make that decision. I either need to stop sleeping with that girl, or I need to stop doing those drugs, or I need to just get on my knees and go to confession and ask for forgiveness. What would you say to that person that's almost there, or they're thinking about this and they're like, I'm where you are? Is it worth it?
They're sitting on the fence.
Yeah, they're sitting on the fence. Is it worth it? Is it hard? What's life like afterwards? What advice would you say to that? Would you give that person?
First thing is, you're never going to move forward unless you try yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you have to make that conscious decision.
Yeah.
That conscious decision to do that.
Yeah.
Now, in my instance, for example, you know, I got to that point where I'd reached despair, and for others, they're probably at that point too.
Yeah.
However, it helps when you have the aid of somebody there, but there are plenty of people there. You know, we've got this platform.
Yeah.
We've got, you know, you've got friends, you've got your parish priests. You have to make the move. You have to do it. You have to want to do it.
Yeah.
And if there is any sense of what, you know, I'm saying or what you're saying that you believe to be true, or things that you hear to be true, and it's really, you know, digging deep, you know, to the depth of your soul, it's there for a reason. It's doing that for a reason, and you have to act on it.
Okay.
And you have to take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
You know, it's a very powerful and amazing thing to sit, you know, in a confessional and pour your soul out in all in all, you know, honesty. It's humiliating at the same time, but there is a certain peace that you get because of it. And don't fear the judgment of other people, really.
Okay.
If that's what's stopping you, or you're afraid of what you might lose, you know, it is better to, you know, to lose everyone, but to gain God at the end of the day, to gain eternal life. And sometimes that involves losing friends, you know, losing family.
Yep.
And it's a risk that you have to take.
Yep.
And it's a risk that is worth it.
Okay.
Because for those people that don't believe in God, for example, or are skeptical, what if it is true? And what if you get to that final moment and you thought, I had the chance, I had that calling, but I decided not to because I was scared of what I may lose. You're about to lose your life. You know, 80 years, if you're lucky, you know, is over like that. What happens if, you know, you die tomorrow? Literally, I know people say it, you know, in a very blasé way, like, what if you die tomorrow? Like, live as though it's your last day. It's like, yeah, live as though it's your last day, but, you know, live as though it matters. Live as though there's something after. You know, and every action that you take has to be moved towards that, that end goal. And if you're at that moment and you don't know what to do, go see your priest. Walk into a church. You can go online. You can just type in confession at your local parish. You'll find it. It's available quite regularly, you know. And
is it important to, like, for someone who's never been, is it important to have a good priest to have your confession heard?
Definitely.
Because I know that Father Anthony Bernard was very instrumental in your in your journey as well.
Definitely. Still is.
Yeah. You know? So with regards to the confession though, confession has been an instrumental part of your life. Okay, and it's very important, and it was very good that you had a chaplain at the school to promote the confession. Yeah, for those that are seeking confession, and for that person that wants to turn his life around, how important is confession? Just to wrap things up, if you could just give us something quick, and what advice would you give to someone?
It's a be-all and end-all.
Okay,
you know, really it is, because so often we are caught in bad habits and vice. And we don't have that ability to stop these bad habits by ourselves. You know, we need the intercession of God, you know, of the grace of God. And what people don't realize is, especially for myself, the way that I overcame my vices, my bad habits, was through confession. It was regular. I was going quite frequently because I had to weed out all these things. Now, when you go to confession, you get this grace that strengthens you not to commit the same sin again later on. And to see where I was back then to where I am now, because of confession, is everything.
Awesome.
You know, and if we die in a state of mortal sin, you know, where we deliberately sin against God, deliberately, and we know we are, and we still choose to persist in it, even though we know what we're doing is wrong and it offends God. And even if you know that there is, you know, some sense of truth about what you've learned or about what you've heard, or about what you're reading, and you still continue to do that, and you die in that state, you're not going to heaven. You know, the church teaches that very clearly. Jesus teaches that very clearly. And for me, I would encourage everyone to go to confession. Really, sit down, examine your conscience. You can find it online. I will send it to anyone if they want it. And you go through the list, and you pray that the Holy Spirit guides you in that. And you list your imperfections, you know, and you confess them, and you become better because of it. You're not weaker, you know. It's a very virtuous thing and a very courageous thing to go to confession, to humiliate yourself. You're more of a person if you go than if you don't go. You know, and I say that, and I'm sure you can agree with me, Makir, you know, you probably wouldn't be where you are now if it wasn't for confession. You know,
true.
You get that grace from God, and it's continuously pushing you to overcome your imperfections. And at the end of the day, you know, you want to die in a state of grace so that you do get to heaven, because this life is only temporary. We're only passengers here. We are moving through, and we don't know when we're going to die. You know, we could die right here. We could die in 10 years, 15 years on the way home. I don't know. But you want to be ready.
That's true.
So live a life of virtue, live a life, you know, filled with God's grace.
Awesome.
And seek the truth. You know, Christ is the truth. He redeemed us. He loved us. He died for us.
Yep.
You know, if truth itself speaks truly, or else there is nothing true, then there's nothing else to be said.
Awesome.
That's it, Mick.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks very much for your testimony. It's been great having you on the
Pleasure,
show.
Mike.
Guys, that was mind-blowing. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Veracious Media. Please also, if you could just share this video with anyone that you know that this might resonate with. I'm Michael Obeid. I'm your host from Veracious Media. That was another episode of Couch Catechism. Keep the faith, stay strong, and we'll see you again next week.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Russo, and I'm here with the team of Veracious Media. What's fantastic about this initiative is that it's an Australian-based catechetical resource. In other words, it's our Catholics right here at home who are teaching us about Jesus Christ in an uncompromised way. We're learning the fullness of the truth and nothing less. We're also supporting our local priests, nuns, and laymen and women, and empowering them to be educators in the faith, to be evangelizers. So by supporting this initiative, you're supporting the church in our country. So get on board and support Veracious Media.